and welcome back to part three of our ongoing coverage of the Rhode Island Author Expo. This is happening on December 7th, and it's going to be an absolutely amazing show. You go to riauthorexpo.com to learn all about this thing. But in the meantime, I'm talking to one of the many, many, many writers who is going to be at the expo. His name is Richard Harrington, and he is the author of the Tender Purdy Mysteries. He joins us right now. Richard, welcome to the show. It's
Hey,
great to have you here.
hey, good to see you, Max, and
All right.
excited to explain what Tender Purdy Mysteries is about.
All right. Well, then let's begin with that. Just what is this book series all about, and where did the idea come from to write it?
Well, first off, it's the Tender Purdy Mysteries. I have two of them. The book one is completed, and book two has been published. But I have four books total in the series, and she's about a little. She's like a little Sherlock Holmes. She has an IQ of 180, but she's got some problems about to enter into her life. Her mother's dying of a brain tumor, and her mother was an orphan. So she's now in a dilemma. The mother doesn't want Tender to end up um, being like her in an orphanage. So they come up with a scheme to trick two people into adopting her. And it's so cool how they do it. So it starts out with an Elaine Smith is in a orphanage herself, and she gets never gets adopted. At the age of 18, she goes on to become a detective. She gets married, and one day she's going to a party for one of her new nieces, and a taxi cab pulls up, and a little girl gets out. And the taxi cab driver goes over and hands her a gift. Now she's already got a gift in her hand, so she got another gift. And this little girl comes up and grabs her hand. She's thinking this little girl must be a friend of the little potty girl. And so at that point, she goes in the house, starts talking to Lorianne, her friend and her relative by marriage. And this cousin that she's now talking to, the little girl runs off. She then discovers later that her and her husband have to go to a retirement party for one of the police officers on the Bismarck Police Department. So all takes place in North Dakota. The interesting thing is I dream all these stories, every single one of them. I wake up in the middle of the night, scratch notes, and start to write. Writing is a lot more difficult than I thought. So you start by putting words on a paper and you write a manuscript. And then you realize I graduated high school with fifth grade reading. So I realize I'm not really capable of writing a book without a good editor. So I got it edited. Then my wife um, re-edited it. And once it got done and I read it, I said, wow, these are really good. My books are fantastic. 5-star rating on Amazon. Have a little girl a young lady who just read book two for the fourth time. And everybody really likes Tender Purdy. I am selling like crazy. They're really doing well. They're fun
That's
to read.
great.
And
Yeah.
they're young adult to adult, so up to 100 years old. The interesting part about the Tender Purdy series is her IQ is 180. And she's exactly like Sherlock Holmes. She's a savant. She can walk into a room and tell you everything about yourself or things about you that nobody else could know. And she just kind of figures stuff out. She's very interesting. I
All
don't want to
right.
give away the whole book. So,
No, don't do that. Don't do that. I want to ask though about developing a mystery series where your main character is just a child. You know, like normally these things you have like the hard-nosed, bitter homicide detective or whatever your main character is, but this is a child, not
yeah,
normal for this kind of stuff. So what
no.
went into just sort of plotting out the mysteries and writing the stuff?
Well, you know what? The weird thing is, a lot of times I dream the ending or the middle. I literally get up at 2 or 3 in the morning, and spend a half hour making notes so that I don't forget. And Tender Purdy, one of the very first cases, her parents realize she's a gifted child and decides they want to ask her to help out on a case. And the case is a little boy goes missing. 5-year-old boy is in his backyard. The father mows the lawn the night before. There's no footprints on the grass other than the little boy. And the mother, he comes home from kindergarten, goes in the backyard to play on the swing. Next thing you know, the little boy's missing. And finally, Elaine and David Purdy, her mom and dad, say, maybe we should ask Tender because we only have so many hours to find this little boy. So they bring Tender in. Nobody's walked on the grass or checked the yard. And she starts looking at the photos. And the FBI are there now because they're involved. And then from then on, the Tender Purdy ends up looking at the fence in the back. She notices in the picture, the fence pickets are all even except for 3 pickets are a little bit off. And she tells her mom that, they look at it and they see it and they said, that's how the little girl got kidnapped. They took the pickets down. They were very much near the swing set. So there's no footprints on the grass, but the little boy ends up going for candy, knew the people, but didn't realize, he was going to be in trouble. They end up kidnapping him. And then ends up that Tender figures that out. Then she says, so the FBI go, where is this little girl? Where is he? She said, see the moving truck and the pictures you took from the airplane, from the helicopter. If you find that moving truck, you'll find the little boy. And that's how she solves her very first case. And it's from then on in, the FBI say, this isn't real. She ends up going to the FBI's headquarters and they're questioning her. And she ends up telling the director of the FBI everything about himself. And then they start using Tender to help solve not only police cases, but FBI cases that are difficult. All these taking place in the late 50s and early 60s. No computers. Everything has to be done by telephone, by a telephone booth, by, none of this modern stuff. And all my books are very clean. There's no gory stuff. Even though Tender solves a lot of cases, she doesn't necessarily see the murders or see the bodies. She just figures them out, and they're really good. They're really good.
if you do say so yourself, right?
No, I'm going to say from what people have told me. I mean, people come to. I went to the Situate Art Festival and I sell 80 books.
Yeah, wow.
And I sell 80 books because a lot of people bought book number 1 last year, and now they wanted to buy book 2. So I went to Springfield, the Big E, and
yes.
I sold 80 books in one day there too.
Wow.
So I had people like it because they figure their 10 or 11-year-olds would love it. But also, I'm finding when the adults read it, they love it also.
Well, that's not bad. I like that. Have you ever run out of books at one of these events? Do you ever think, well, I'm out of books, time to go?
I bring like 200.
Oh, there we go. I like that you're ready for this.
Yeah.
So why a child for your main character? How did you come to decide, okay, this is who we're going to be leading the book with?
I don't know why. I've written 6 books, 4 of the Tender Purdy series. And then I've got 2 other books, A Christmas Story, and those haven't been published, only these first 2. And I dream it. And when I dream it, in fact, I first dreamt Special Birdie. And one night I woke up and said Tender Birdie. And then I eventually changed it to Tender Purdy. I'm in the process of trademarking the name. So that I would have control over that portion of the book. So, Sherlock Holmes never trademarked his name.
Ooh.
So anybody can write a Sherlock Holmes book. And that's, I'm sure that people would argue with you, but there's so many different storylines out there, of Sherlock Holmes. But I came up with the little girl being a little genius, a little savant, and everything she reads, she memorizes. And I know there's kids out there that have done that. You know, that there's kids who have done things that, and she tends to like mysteries. First book is called Tender Answers the Call. She answers the call to become a detective. In the book two, it's Tender's top secret case, and a Air Force pilot is accused of selling a jet to the Russians for $1 million. And he thinks he did it, and the Russians managed to trick him into thinking it. And it's really a great read. I think I'm getting better as a writer each book as I go along. And each one is a cliffhanger, so you got to buy book two to find out what happens to book one, Vicky Smith, what happened to her. And
Yeah, okay.
I love writing. I could start at 8 in the morning and go to 11 at night.
Nice. Have you ever written before, but like before the first Tender Purdy book? Was this your first like, you
No,
know,
yeah, in 2002, I wrote an adventure book, and I'm now editing. We're now rewriting that. The issue with writing is when you're not an editor yourself and you're writing words, they don't make a lot of sense until the editor gets in there and really fixes it. So great editor makes you a great writer.
oh yeah, definitely.
O- Otherwise, I'm just an average guy putting a couple of paragraphs together. Each one of my books are about 50,000 words. So they're more novellas than
Sure.
novels.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, you mentioned you have a couple other books coming out, but will there be more in the Tender Purdy series?
yep, two more are already done.
Nice.
The books are done, but they need to be edited. So again, it's
Uh,
just words on paper.
Gotcha.
So go
Without
ahead.
giving away any kind of spoilers, what can we expect in the other books?
Uh, in book number three, um, Jake Purdy is going to tell my father-in-law's story about World War II. My father-in-law fought at Normandy, and he drove the landing gear for the Navy, and he was on Gold Beach, and he wrote a big story about it. And I added Jake Purdy, Tender's grandfather, into that story. That it was a great love story, but it was also exact words of what happened during World War II. In book four, um, not giving away too much, Elaine Purdy, who grew up in an orphanage, and so she never had a mother or father. And back in 1937, when she was dropped out of an orphanage, you could not put a last name or you'd get arrested. It wasn't until the 80s that they made drop-off centers. So you got pregnant, had a baby, and she got dropped off. She never knows who her parents are. She doesn't know. Nobody ever came. Never an uncle, grandfather, and so now she's going to go on an adventure in book four to try to find her identity.
Does the fact that she doesn't know who her parents are, does that really weigh on her a lot?
Yeah, because when she finally gets in book one and gets married, she says, "I now have a father. You know, it's a father-in-law, but I now have a dad. I have a mom. I have cousins. I I have, you know, aunts and uncles. You know, so she is really emotional about the fact that she goes to a family dinner every Sunday, and you know that she's there with grandparents. She she is incapable, and I won't say too much, but Tender is their first child, so I won't tell you any more about her
Exactly.
ability. But Tender's their first child, and she is she's such an amazing child. But yeah, she is a child. She still gets in trouble. She has a tremendous amount of knowledge, but no wisdom. As if you
Yeah, I
have
was.
any children, you know, children have zero wisdom, and yet you might have a very smart little boy or girl
Mhm.
at a young age that can do things that you go, wow, that's amazing. So, um,
Does the fact that Tender doesn't, so like as you mentioned, Tender doesn't have that kind of like life experience. Again, she's 7, of course. But does that influence how she kind of pursues the mysteries because she might not have certain concepts?
Well, she ends up by the end of book one. Actually, they send it to the Montessori school, and they don't teach you there what you need to learn. She got 1,600 on her SATs. So they send it to the Montessori school. She's young, but they let her pick what she wants to do, and she decides to go pursue uh, to be a lawyer. And by the time she's 6 years old, she passes the bar. But she can't do a trial, but she can help people. And so it's pretty interesting, some of the cases. She sits there with the real attorney and she just has fun with it. So yeah, she needs to be a child. That's the part that for me to mix it in to make sure she still has fun. She still plays with little kids. She still goes to an amusement park. She still has that kind of fun, but yeah, she loves helping people. And her mother and father sometimes get concerned. Are we giving her too much? And she just tells them um, she believes she's called to help people, and that's what she does. She really
Okay.
believes.
All right. Now, as you mentioned earlier, you are among the many, many writers who are going to be at the Rhode Island Author Expo in just a few weeks. How are you at these events? What's your pitch to people to get them to walk over to you and buy your books?
Well, when I usually come by, I usually just ask them if they like mysteries, and they see the books and they think they're kids' books, and then I have to tell them no, they're young adults to adult. And they're a great read. So you just kind of like ask the custom people as they're coming by, do they like mysteries? If they don't, then you can usually point them out to another author that's close by. I mean, there's over 100 authors there. It's a great time for people who love to read to get out there and touch and feel and decide what kind of books they really, really, really love. And I don't know. I've read some of the authors' books because sometimes we'll trade, and they love my books, and I've got some that I've read that are just spectacular. I mean, really well written, good storylines, and so I always look for a good book that might interest me, and I buy it because I read every night. And
Nice.
you know,
Nice.
go ahead.
I was going to ask, just do you have like a favorite genre? Do you prefer mysteries yourself?
I like mysteries or suspense. I don't like the horror stuff,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't like too much of the gory um, stuff where they describe a lot of things in there that I go, oh man, why did they? I didn't need to know that. Although I might watch them on TV, I necessarily don't like to. I like the mysteries that are really deep, that really. And there's some great Rhode Island authors. Some of them fairly famous. One of the authors sold 10,000 copies of his book. Julian Ayot's got one that is really, really good book. Um, Lynn Heisman, she's got a great set of books. I mean, there's some authors out there that are really big hitters in Rhode Island, and they do well. I'm not there
Excellent.
yet. I'm only two books, and I've only been one full year selling. In September of last year was my first uh, book I published this year, the other one. But I'm going to catch up with them. I'll get my
And
books.
just give it time. You got to give it time.
Yep.
I'm curious as to what got you into writing in the first place.
I'm a real estate agent and a builder, and I would be at open houses, and I started dreaming about this a story about a little girl. And in the process, I just at my open house, nobody's showing up back in the early 2000s, 2002. So I would start scratching stuff on a yellow paper. Next thing you know, I've got, 70,000 words. And I start typing it. And then from there, that's the one I'm finishing now. That's the one we're having edited. And we're rewriting a lot of it. Um, Boy, if you're looking to learn how to write, Aria has a lot of classes, uh, a lot of things that you can get involved in to learn how to put a manuscript together. What it should be in a book. You know, I try to write my books where only one person's telling the story. So I don't go from the first person to a third person to a first to a third. People get confused. When I wrote the first Tender Purdy, I wrote 3 or 4 times. I wrote the same person's name. There's different characters, and then the editors would go in and say, "You can't do that," because you can't have you can't have three Davids because they'll get confused about David Purdy. So things you
Hmm.
learn, and if you're really looking to learn how to write, if you love writing, it's so much fun, so much fun.
Excellent. All right. Well, folks, that brings this conversation to a close. Richard, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate this.
And
And
Max, yep, we appreciate what you do and helping authors be a little bit more successful.
all right. And one more time, folks, it is riauthorexpo.com for all the information. The event is free. Of course, the books are not. There's going to be panels, raffles, all kinds of good stuff. So certainly check it out. And I hope to see you all there.
Max, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.